Welcome to Unlimited. Today we're going to be speaking all things COVID. We're going to be looking at societal issues regarding young people, but also some of the things that affect us. To my right, I have the boss of Cribs. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Mark and I'm the Chief Executive of Cribs, which means I'm kind of in charge, really, of everything we do in schools around the area.
To my left, I have mother of three. Abigail, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name's Abigail. I work for Cribs on the primary and secondary team. And as Joel said, I have three children. They're currently in year 4, year 7 and year 9.
Great. So we're going to kind of go into a bit of a discussion, some questions, just to get the ball rolling and see how we feel. So I'm going to ask Mark first. As a CEO of Cribs, as a father, as a husband, when lockdown was first implemented, how were you able to manage your emotions and the emotions of your family and employees or staff?
It was quite difficult. I'm usually quite a laid-back person, but I think the uncertainty, the not knowing what was going to happen, obviously with people who work at Cribs, this is their job, they earn money from it. How was that going to work? We weren't able to do any work in schools. At home, you know, all of a sudden, all of us were at home and we couldn't go out, people weren't working, I was trying to do work at home, so it was quite tricky. How did I manage it? Partly talking a lot helps. Talking to staff, talking to people at home, trying to get some kind of routine so I could get some work done. Trying to keep people in Cribs informed as much as I know, even when I didn't know anything. And for myself, trying to make sure that I had time to go for a walk, to get a bit of physical exercise, but also as a Christian to talk to God while I'm walking. That might sound a bit weird, but just to try and get a little bit of peace and calm about the whole situation, because it was a bit stressful at first.
So as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, lockdown came. How were you able to manage your house, your relationship with your husband, but also being a daughter to your parents? How did that work for you?
Yeah, well, I think lockdown was hard because it's like nothing anyone's ever experienced in their lifetime. And it was so unexpected. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the year, nobody was planning for a global pandemic that meant we couldn't leave the house for 5 months. Nobody was planning for that. So I think you have to, your brain, your thoughts, your emotions, they have to catch up really quickly with events that are happening all around you. And that can be really stressful, I think. For my parents, obviously, my parents are older, my dad's 85, so it is a worrying time. My mum is in an at-risk group, so that was worrying. But they're your parents, you can't tell them what to do. Like, they chose not to shield completely, and that was their choice, and I couldn't impose my choice on them. We did try and keep in contact with them, so we had weekly kind of meals together over Zoom, so that was interesting. And I think for me, learning to kind of manage it all and cope with it all was about just learning to cope with the day in front of me. That today is today and tomorrow is tomorrow. And I do like to plan. I like to plan into the future. I like to know what I'm doing in the next few months at least. But you couldn't do that. You had to just focus on today. And like Mark, I'm a Christian, so I read the Bible. There's a verse in the Bible that says, each day has enough worry of its own and not to worry about tomorrow. So I think that learning to do that, to just focus on today and today's task was how I kind of learned to cope with it.
Great. So we've just heard from Abigail. We're going back over to Mark. And it seems that you and Abigail kind of had the same ways of dealing with your families and all that stuff. And so the next question I have for you is, as we were coming out of lockdown, how did you feel about going forward? So the government kind of eased and relaxed lockdown a lot. So as a CEO and as a father, how were you able to then re-engage with work and re-engage with your family to get them through a tough period?
I think one of the interesting things for me was that actually coming out of lockdown was almost as scary as going into it, because you didn't know what to expect. When you can't go anywhere, you learn to put up with it. You may not like it, but you learn to put up with it. But all of a sudden, you think, can we do this? How can we do that? So thinking about Cribs, how can we do our work when some schools don't want visitors coming in, understandably? And so, we then end up doing things like this. But it was like a kind of massive stimulus to the brain to think, oh my goodness, what do we do? And so that can be stressful, but it can also be quite creative. So there's something about, I think for me, about learning to sort of see the positive side of it and to ride the wave, the positive bit of it, but also manage the negative bit that it feels quite scary too. So it's kind of a balance. And I guess probably for some of the people watching this, going back to school was maybe a bit like that as well. It was exciting, it was positive because you'd not seen your friends for so long and you know, got bored, frankly. But actually there's a little bit of a scary side to it as well. And so I guess we're all in that place of learning to balance the positive and the negative.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, for that amazing answer. So we're going to go back to Abigail. We're going to kind of look, I want to kind of get your idea and how you got your children ready to go back to school, because obviously we've come out of lockdown and they've been off for a long time. So how were you able to prep them and get them ready to go back into schools?
Yeah, well, I think actually I have to take my hat off to the schools, really, because I think you might not realise it, but your teachers have been doing so much work behind the scenes to get things ready for you and to try and make things as normal as possible for you and to get you back into school in an easiest way as possible. Because I think my children go to 3 different schools and they've all been really good at getting them back into school. Obviously, my middle one has just started year 7, so he was going to a brand new school. He was starting everything new, but they've really looked after him. He knows where he's going. He knows his teachers. They've tried to make it as easy as possible in the circumstances. I think some things were basic about getting back to school, like we started to get up earlier in the mornings. We started to go to bed earlier at night. Started to make sure that they were having breakfast every morning and not having breakfast at like 11 and things like that. So just normal practical things to get yourself back into something of a routine. In some ways it was a bit like the summer holidays, actually, because they did have schoolwork up until the end of the year, and then they had the summer holidays, and then they went back to school. So in some ways it was a bit like going back after that. But yeah, I think, and actually I've been amazed at how well they've all done. That there have been very little problems going back, and I think I was anticipating more. I think actually my children and you guys as well, you're really resilient and you have more capacity than maybe us grown-ups realised, and you've done really well at getting back into school.
So Mark, right now we're in a bit of a limbo because we don't know if we're going back into lockdown as the cases have risen. So the question to you is, how are you preparing to go back into lockdown if we do, and what advice would you give young people in terms of going into lockdown and their emotional well-being?
Yeah, it's a good question, because we are at a time when we just don't know what's going to happen next, and hopefully we won't go into a lockdown like we did before, but no one really knows. And in a sense, I don't know if it's better or worse having done it once before, because we know a little bit of what to expect, but I guess if it does happen again, it will be different. I think a couple of things for me, and that I would say to all those watching it, one is make the most of what we can do now. Get the most out of the school experience that you're going through now. Make the most of the contact you can have with people now. But also, the schools, I know, are doing an incredible job at having everything ready so that if schools do have to shut or you have to self-isolate for a while because of the cases, you've got learning you can do straight away. So don't stress. There are things that you as an individual need to worry about, and there are things you need to let other people worry about. So one of the things I think I've learned through all this is there are things that I, as the boss of Cribs, can't control. I can't control whether schools want us in or allowed to have us in, but what I can do is control what we do about that. So we'll find other ways of doing things like this. So don't worry about what you can't control, but worry about what you can control. And the most important thing actually you can control is yourself and your own reactions. And as soon as you let yourself get overwhelmed by things, the decisions you make will be less good.
Thank you. Okay, back to Abigail. So what are the 3 main tips you would give young people at this juncture in their lives right now?
Wow, 3 things. I think make sure that you take care of yourself physically. So make sure that you are getting some exercise every day, or regularly if you can't do every day. Make sure that you're making healthy choices when it comes to your food. Make sure you have breakfast, make sure you have lunch, make sure you have dinner. Don't just snack. And I think, you know, like I learned in lockdown, take each day as it comes. Enjoy each day that you get, because actually don't put off till tomorrow something you can do today, because actually we're living in that period now where we're not sure if you'll be able to do it tomorrow. So actually enjoy today, get the most out of today. And enjoy the fact that you can go to school and that you can see friends and you can learn in a classroom environment. So look after yourself. Enjoy today. Was it 3? Yeah. Enjoy today. And I think put the most effort in that you can, because you'll get the most out.
Great, thank you so much. So guys, we've come to the end. Thank you so much for watching. You've heard the advice that has been given. So we hope as an Unlimited team and as Cribs that if we do go back into lockdown, there's enough here for you guys to take into it. You've come out of one and you've done really amazing, and we're grateful to you guys that you're so resilient. This country needs resilience, and young people, you guys are resilient. Thank you so much. See you later.